Alright, here we go. Today we're going to discuss a little bit about Visual Basic, or at least the IDE that comes with it, Visual Studios. So, first and foremost, you should hopefully have it installed on your computer, for one. For two, we just need to find it. Whether you're using a PC, Mac, or whatever. PC is what I'm using here, so it's a little bit easier. You may not be able to see it, but there is a little search bar down here. So you can type in Visual Studios. I believe the current book is using 2017, this is 2019, so there may be a couple of little differences, hopefully not anything too major. But first, let's fire it up and see what it looks like. This is, or something similar to this, is what you should get when you start it up. After opening a project, then we just simply say open project, find it, and it should open. For now, we're just going to create an empty one. And again, this is another thing that might be a little different depending on what you got installed. I've got quite a few things installed on here, so I'm looking for specifically Visual Basic. And then of course I can specify further whether it's Windows or for Android or for other things, or what type of project and that sort of thing. Alright, so there's a couple of different ways you can code in most languages. In Visual Basic, the two ways we're looking at, one would be mostly the forms, which should be on this list if you look down. May not be in the same order as this, but if you scroll down enough, you should find Windows Format. Another would be console. This would be more writing the code. You don't really see the GUI portion of it as much. For now, we're just going to look at the form portion of this. So I'm just going to click on that and hit Next. And then, of course, it'll ask us where to save it. Depending on what computer you're using, you may want to just use the default. It defaults here. And on mine to your basically your username in this little repository. You can change that by just clicking on it. And I might suggest documents. If you're using one of the machines like at our school that are virtual machines, then you definitely don't want this to be using the default. If you're on a virtual machine, that means saving it anywhere other than maybe your flash drive or somewhere else is basically going to erase it at the end. I'm just going to leave this alone, and I'm going to call it test 1, I guess. There we go. And I'm just going to hit Next. And it may give you another option here. I'll just leave the defaults. Create. And after a brief moment or two, it will create a project. And it looks like I'm going to have to kind of resize this a little bit. I do want to be able to see everything, but this is roughly what you're going to see. And you may actually not see the little toolbar that just popped up. I actually turned that on earlier, so let's just get this kind of right in my window here. So we can see everything. There we go. So, first off, we've got our menu up here, and it gave us kind of a default form. The first place you kind of look at when you're dealing with Visual Basic is the GUI, the front end. This window that you see in front of you, basically. We can add buttons and little tools and little toggles to this thing. And then once we've got that somewhat built up, we can go in further and actually add some functionality, some code and stuff behind all that. So for now, we're just going to look at the front end of this. We'll worry about the coding once we kind of figured out how the GUI portion of this works. Now you start off with really not much at all here, as you can see. Probably it'll look something like this. You've got your one form. That's it. That's what you start with, basically an empty window. We can open projects, we can make new projects, you can close, you can save and do a couple of other things here. We can edit, and most of this stuff is unusable because there's really not much here. Once I start adding things, I might be able to cut and copy and paste and undo and do other things. One of the first things we've are going to want to do, though, is go to View if it's not already there, and turn on the toolbox. Click that. A new window should kind of pop up here. And if it's hidden, you might see it on the left here. I kind of want to pin that so I can keep it on the screen. And this is going to give us all the little things we could throw in this form, whether it's a button or a menu or, you know, other little gadgets and gizmos. So before we get into that, let's just take a look on the right side. If you don't see Solution Explorer, then it's here under View. If you don't see the properties, it's probably over here as well. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. This is basically just showing you what all is in here. You can have multiple little forms and things. Right now we just have one. So there's really no need to worry too much about this. This Properties window is fairly important because it lets us change things. If I add a button, I can change the text on it. I can change the color. I can change a couple of things. This window, I could come up here and change the color to that if I want, to a different color. I can undo it now that I've done something. Control Z. There it goes. Undo. Not sure why the... Oh, there's redo. Of course, we can add a picture for the background or something. We can come up here and give some of these things some names. Of course, by default, this is called Form 1, but we could change some of those if we want. I can scroll down and you see there's a bunch of different things we can set here. Again, we're not worried about setting anything just yet, just kind of getting used to the interface here. Now, we've kind of gone through all these little windows. Let's just head through the menu up here, and then we'll talk about the things we can add and drag and drop on this thing. So, first off, went over File, went over Edit. View allows us several things, and most of these we don't really need for most of our projects, but we'll get to some of these for sure as we go through the chapters and learn to do more stuff. For now, just know Toolbox is probably one of the more important things. Output, once we start getting things working, be a little bit more useful than it is right now. So, Get, we're not worried about that just yet. Project, oop, there we go. We can add new items, add new components, which is what we're going to be doing over here actually. We can create new folders over here if we want to like organize things. We have a bunch of pictures and things. We probably don't want everything in one big folder. We want it a little more organized, but for now we'll put that off for later. Build, well, once we get this project put together, we have it coded and doing things. You know, I want to calculate something, I put something in a box, I hit a button, it does that. That's what build does. It takes all that code and all those forms and compiles it together into a program that can run on Windows or whatever else. Debug, if there's some errors or issues, we can enter debug mode, which kind of takes it through a step at a time. So instead of just running the whole project, it'll run like a little bit, then it'll move to the next one, then it'll move to the next one. So it makes it somewhat easier to debug if you have some weird issue and you're not sure why or when it's happening. And of course we can format things. If you have buttons and stuff, you can format the font and other things, or just format the location. And several of these others we won't really use that much. Code cleanup, calculate. Some of these, you know, we may use later, but for the most part, a lot of these menus are somewhat useless, especially early on. We don't have any extensions to worry about. We could make some windows float and add a couple of other things. We're not that worried. If you want to check the help, there is a fairly substantial help about anything you could dump on this. There's also several websites where you can just build things step by step, and video walkthroughs and that sort of thing. Alright, so that's roughly the little menu system up here. And like I said, it may be a little different depending on what version you have. Now, we come over here. The toolbox. This is going to allow me to put stuff onto this form. Now, it's got several of these little arrows here. All Windows form. I've got, well, checkboxes, list boxes. This is basically just everything. I can add a button, a checkbox, or I can just go specifically to, the common ones if I don't want it to be quite so full, because you may not use error provider or some of this other stuff. Now, data, menus, I can add a little menu strip for a little file, much like I've got here. I can put that into the program if I want to. A status bar at the bottom that displays when you do things. You could add pointers, which I will probably see a little bit of that later. Other little components and things, image lists, combo boxes, printing if you want to set up some sort of print dialog so we can print the page and that sort of thing. And of course, different boxes, different things. The things we're going to see the most of, though, are probably under this common Windows form. Buttons, checkboxes, labels, and probably some text boxes and things like that. These are the things you're going to see probably the most of everything. So if I were to click, let's say, text box, and then I just click up here, just kind of drag it. Look at that. I got a little text box here. And if you notice, down here we've got text box 1. If I click off of it, it's the form instead of the text box. If I click on the text box, we're back on the properties of this. And I can come and change the style of it, the fonts, come in here and change that if we like. And we can change how it's viewed, how it deals with the data that's inside this text box. Now, a text box is, when we run this program, something we can type something into. So it allows us to ask the user to type in their password or something. They type it in here, and we can pull that information by knowing what the name of it is. And you can, of course, right-click on it and align it and do a couple other things. You can just click Properties, and it just brings this up if it's not already up. So let's see here. We scroll on down, and you see there's several different things. We can make it hidden. We can align it. We can do a myriad of different things to it. For now, we're just going to add it on there and just be happy that it's there. Maybe I want a button. So let's just put a little button there. Button 1. And notice it says button 1. It's named button 1. And the text on it is also button 1. We scroll down. See if I can hunt for the text box. We have locations, the size. We can, of course, adjust the size by dragging it as well. We can also come down here and do it numerically. You'll notice that that changes as I adjust the button. Let's see here. We move on up. There's the name of the button. So this is called button 1, and I'm just going to say, we'll call it submit. Alright, now the button's name is submit. So whenever I was, let's say, coding it or something, I would be calling it submit. And I probably, honestly, as far as names go, probably want to call it something like submit button. You don't want to be super vague with it. Now the text that's on there, you notice it says button 1. Let's see if we can find that guy. Text, button 1. And I'll just call it submit on the text. And the text changes, just like that. And of course we can come up here and change the color and various other things. We'll just leave it kind of like that for the moment, just since we're just playing around with it. But this is essentially how you kind of build a form. And of course we can even resize the form if this is too big, for example. Now the three things you're going to see the most of early on in particular would be the text box, would be the buttons, and if you notice it kind of locks in place as I wiggle it around a little bit. There we go. The other one would be a label. Put up a label, and it's basically just some text that displays. So let's go down here, the text. Type in your password, let's say. And my label says type in my password. And of course I can rearrange anything pretty much on the fly here as I want. Here we go, type in your password. there it goes. Now if I were to run this, build solution, or run code analysis, let's just say build, boop, it'll compile and basically get it ready to run. It'll make it like a little exe for me to actually run, see how this works. Now let's see if we can't pull up or add a couple more little things here. We can add list boxes. Let's see, dates, checkboxes. I'll just throw in a couple of these. And notice it says checkbox 1, checkbox 2. It increments whenever there's a new thing added. And if these are all kind of out of whack, we can just meander this thing back. Let's see, make sure they're all even. There we go. Multiple checkboxes. A combo box. Let's see that. It's just a drop-down box where I click it, and it might have multiple things in it. Of course, we can add whatever things you want. If we want 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 different choices, we can just add them to our little combo box. Now, let's see what else. Picture box. That should be somewhat self-explanatory. Has picture in it. Allows us to basically put a little picture in so we can see we can move it around, we can turn it on and off. Let's say I hit the submit button, you do it correctly. Well, a certain picture pops up, maybe your profile picture or something. Of course, we don't have anything in it just yet, but we could adjust that later. Background image layout, border style, we can adjust the size. There's an image. And of course, I don't have a picture to import, but we could dump a picture in there if we want. Now, and of course, it also has a name and, you know, a couple other little modifiers. We're not really that worried about doing anything to it just yet. Just getting a feel for the whole system. Now, progress bar, you see this in programs when things are getting loaded up, and it slowly, or swiftly, depending on your system, moves itself up and down, right? Whenever a game is loading, they have this little progress bar that goes across the screen telling you that it's loaded. Oh, dear. Now, again, we could have, let's see, we've done buttons, checkboxes, a couple of these other things. We haven't really messed with the combo box, but we just threw it on there. Now, let's see if I can find my file menu here. A little drop-down menu. Probably menu strip. Let's see what happens when we throw that up there. Oh. Alright, type here. I guess, let's see if I go ahead and type here. We'll just type in a couple of things. List, pickles. Alright. So if I click my file menu, this should pop up. And of course, none of these are doing anything. I can have another menu pop up over here. We can have a whole list of things. Later on, we'd have to actually write the code for this. So basically, I would click this, and when I click on this, I'd have to basically come in here and do all the coding for the background stuff. Now this loads up this picture or opens this file or whatever else we have to do. That allows me to have a couple of little menus up here, just like we have here, file, edit, view, whatever it is we want this program to actually have. That's roughly the gist of the GUI portion of this. Now, like I said, we can test it, we can run it, we can check and make sure it does what it's supposed to do. Let's see here. And by publishing it, basically just makes it ready for us to give to people so they can use it. Generally, that's something you do much, much later. For now, we just want to make sure it runs and works. Now you'll notice that there is a test up here with a little play button. If I click that, watch what happens. Oh, there were some errors. Let's see, what error did it say? Something failed. And of course, it could just be this computer itself. Well, let's see. Yeah, blah, blah, blah. Debug profile does not exist. We may have just missed a step. We'll give that a shot. Let's see. Pretty sure we did everything we wanted to. There were some build errors. Well, I don't have any code on here, so I'm not sure what build errors there are just yet. But like I said, I'm just playing with it right now. There's really nothing to run. Even if I ran it, it would just essentially be, let me press delete on that. And you can delete any of these things you've added just by pressing the delete key. But this would just basically just show a form, and that was it. That would be it. Nothing would actually happen should this thing even run. So let's see. It says sub main was not found. Oh, I think it's a code issue. Since we don't have any code for this yet, it's complaining about that. Now we can check code for stuff by kind of clicking on the button. So if I double click the button, you'll actually go into the coding portion of this where we can actually make it do things. This is the button that I clicked on. So basically we would write the code to make it maybe check the text box and see if the password is correct and that sort of thing in this particular instance. Now if we want to go back, you see there's actually two little options here. There's design, and then there is this form 1BB, which doesn't have design next to it. And of course I can add any of these things, and as I click you see it just adds them to this list here. So if I have anything that I need to deal as far as code goes, I can just double click it and it just gets added to my little list of things. Now we are missing, like, I think the main actually, but we're not really worried about running this at the moment. We're just worried about, just seeing how the interface works and kind of getting used to it a little bit. The biggest portion, at least early on, is just getting used to all the menus and how this works. Once you get used to that, then we can start adding some functionality, some codes, make it do more interesting things. So that's essentially it, just kind of a quick overview of Visual Basic, the whole menu system. And it may be a little different depending on which version you have. This is the 2019 version, but it should be pretty similar. And you see I have the dark colored theme here. It may be a little lighter on yours depending. But this is roughly it. Now, of course, as usual, if you have any questions or anything like that, you can feel free to ask me. We'll do a little bit more next time. Actually, I think the next video will actually be us putting a little something together and maybe attempting to make something a little more functional, now that we kind of have the gist of how this thing runs. Alright, that's it.